It is anchored in optimism. It must be, for optimism brings with it hope, a future with a purpose, and therefore a will to fight for a better world. Without this optimism, there is no reason to carry on. So what is the purpose of Rules for Radicals? Alinsky recognised that radicals who want to change the system were largely incapable of changing the system, due to their exceedingly poor methods and tactics. They understand that they are within a system that does not serve their needs, but are too headstrong and fiery to enact mass change. Alinsky therefore states the purpose of Rules for Radicals directly. The Prince was written by Machiavelli for the haves on how to hold power. Rules for Radicals is written for the have-nots on how to take it away. While Alinsky did write Rules for Radicals specifically to be a book to enable revolution against the establishment, it's important to stress that it is not an ideologically or politically partisan book, and that is why you should read it. Alinsky's rules and ideas are principles and tactics that can be applied by any group of have-nots against the haves. It was a product of its time, of course, and so the examples given in the book are usually liberal radicals against the conservative establishment. But this is not the limit of what Alinsky is saying. Often Alinsky makes a point of providing examples to demonstrate how and when political action should be taken. He observes that inaction is always worse than action, even actions that appear to be folly at the time, because inaction directly serves the status quo. What Alinsky also understood with crystal clarity is that power is absolute. If you're not holding the called political realism, or the ideology of change. As stated, Alinsky was not an ideologue. He was very aware that his philosophy lived or died on its ability to accurately identify and understand real-world events objectively, beyond the boundaries of ideological dogmatism, and to understand and empathize with opposing positions in order to identify their strengths and weaknesses. This is what he called the ideology of change. Quote, "An organizer working in and for an open society is in an ideological dilemma. To begin with, he does not have a fixed truth. Truth to him is relative and changing. Everything to him is relative and changing. He is a political relativist. Does this mean that the organizer is in a free society, for a free society is rudderless? No. I believe he has a far better sense of direction and political compass than the closed society organizer with his rigid political ideology. The basic requirement for the understanding of the politics of change is to recognize the world as it is. We must work with it on its terms if we are to change it to the kind of world we would like it to be. We must first see the world as all political realists have, in terms of what men do and not what they ought to do, as Machiavelli and others have put it. Political realists see the world as it is, an arena of power politics, moved primarily by perceived immediate self-interests, where morality is rhetorical rationale for expedient action and self-interest. As a political relativist, he was specifying that all actions take place within their unique political contexts for their own unique political reasons, and things are defined as much by themselves as by the things they border. Which is why we'll now discuss Alinsky's Trinity. Alinsky separated the world into three classes. He deliberately avoided naming them as the economic classes we're all familiar with, the rich, the middle class and the poor, because they are not based purely on economics, although often these classes will directly align with these labels. He calls these classes the haves, the have-nots, and the have-a-little, want-mores. These are self-explanatory. The haves are the status quo, the powerful actors in society that wish for things to remain as they are. The have-a-little, want-mores look to them for leadership and guidance, with envy, because ultimately they want to join the haves, and what's more, they think they have the means of achieving this goal. The have-nots are the lowest class, who suffer most under the depredation of the haves. They understand that they will never lose their status as have-nots by operating through the current system, which is why they are the biggest catalyst for revolution. Alinsky assigns thermopolitical terms to these groups. This categorization is used to demonstrate how hot each group is, or how likely political change is to come from each group. The haves want to keep things as they are and are opposed to change. Thermopolitically, they are cold and determined to freeze the status quo. The have-a-little want-mores generally seek this safe way, where they can profit by change and yet not risk losing the little they have. Thermopolitically, they are tepid and rooted in inertia. The have-nots are a mass of cold ashes of resignation and fatalism. But inside, there are the glowing embers of hope, which can be fanned by the building of means of obtaining power. Once the fever begins, the flame will follow. They have nowhere to go but up. Alinsky points out that while circumstances may ignite the fever, it is the organizer's job to fan the flames. In pursuit of that, there is a very important question to consider. Do the ends justify the means? Alinsky redefines the question, do the ends justify the means, to be far more specific to the situation on the ground. Quote, "Does the end justify the means is meaningless as it stands. The real and only question regarding the ethics of means and ends is, and always has been, does this particular end justify this particular means?" As a personal note, broadly speaking, it's always been my belief that ends do not justify means, but this inclination comes from a point of dogmatic principle as applied to the gravest circumstances, as you can see by the picture of the Enola Gay. When dealing with situations proportionally less important, the question can be reframed as, do these particular ends justify these particular means, and it becomes far more pragmatic and applicable to the real world. Quote, "To say that corrupt means corrupt the ends is to believe in the immaculate conception of ends and principles. The real arena is corrupt and bloody. Life is a corrupting process, from the time a child learns to play his mother off against his father in the politics of when to go to bed. He who fears corruption fears life." Whether you agree with that or not, it's this justification that Alinsky uses to dismiss the armchair moralists who have never taken political action and therefore act as bystanders to critique the action of others. This safe position is distinctly at odds with Alinsky's own experiences as a community organizer on the ground. Put simply, Alinsky thinks that if you want to effect real change, you're going to have to get a little bit dirty in the process, because that's how life works. More importantly, the armchair moralists who hold back action on the grounds of it being less than perfect are direct, if passive, allies of the haves in the struggle to freeze out the have-nots and any change they may have a legitimate claim to enact. As a personal note, I say this as a person who recognizes himself